3 days after their son Tommy vanished into the forest without a trace, a fox began appearing at Sarah's and Michael's window. It pawed at the glass as if trying to communicate by knocking. Driven by the desperate need to find their son, they decided to follow it, leading to a discovery beyond their wildest imagination. Will their discovery lead them to Tommy? But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. 3 days had passed since Michael and Sarah's son, Tommy, disappeared. The police had no leads, and the small town of Redwood Falls was under a pall of silence and suspicion. Each night, as their despair grew, a fox with strikingly intense eyes appeared at their living room window, tapping the glass softly with a paw as if trying to deliver a message. On the 4th night, Michael watched from the sofa, his eyes locked on the fox's movements. It was peculiar that this animal behaved with such purpose. "Maybe it's a sign," Sarah whispered next to him, her voice shaky with mingled hope and fear. Together, they decided if the fox returned tomorrow, they would follow it. The next evening, as the sky painted with sunset hues, the fox appeared again, its knocks more urgent. Without hesitation, Michael and Sarah grabbed their coats and a flashlight. They stepped into the cool evening, their hearts pounding with a cocktail of fear and anticipation. It led them through familiar streets, then veered into the woods that bordered their town. The woods opened to a clearing they had never seen before, even though they'd lived in Redwood Falls all their lives. In the center, a dilapidated cabin, overrun with vines, stood eerily silent. The fox stopped, staring at the cabin before vanishing into the thick woods. Approaching the cabin, the old wood creaked under their weight. Inside, it was dust and shadows, but on a dusty table lay a child's red, undeniably Tommy's. Sarah's knees nearly buckled at the sight. "He was here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The cap was a promise, a clue that he was still out there. They searched the cabin but found little else. As they prepared to leave, Michael noticed a photograph pinned against the wall. It showed a group of people, among them a man who bore a surprisingly striking resemblance to Sarah. "Who are these people?" he wondered aloud, as Sarah made her way to his side to study the picture. "I have no idea," she whispered, eyes locked on the unknown man who looked so much like her. Leaving the cabin, they marked the spot on their GPS and decided to return with the police in the morning. That night, both of them lay awake, the image of the photograph and Tommy's red cap haunting them. Who was that man in the picture, and what was that place? Thoughts swirled chaotically, each more unsettling than the last. Neither Sarah nor Michael slept much. Morning brought no relief. The police combed the cabin and the surrounding area but came up empty. No new clues or leads surfaced, and both the photograph and the man remained a mystery. "We need to understand this place," Sarah said determinedly when Michael looked at her in despair. Their first stop was Mr. Abernathy, the town historian, who lived in a cluttered house filled with books and papers. He listened intently, his eyes narrowing when he saw the photograph. "Ah, that cabin," he murmured, thumbing through an old ledger. "It's been abandoned for decades, but it used to be." His voice trailed off, eyes going vacant as if he was remembering an untold pain. Sarah and Michael gave Mr. Abernathy a moment to collect his thoughts before pressing him further. "What can you tell us about the cabin?" Michael prompted, his voice tinged with urgency. Mr. Abernathy, clearing his throat, pointed to a faded map on the wall. "Let me show you exactly where it stands," he said, unrolling the map across his cluttered desk. They inquired about the cabin's origins and ownership, showing intense curiosity about its history. "This land was first claimed by one of our earliest settlers," Mr. Abernathy explained, tracing a line with his finger on the map. "The cabin was built as a frontier outpost," he continued, his eyes reflecting a flicker of nostalgia as he spoke of the rugged early days of Redwood Falls. Mr. Abernathy shared that the cabin once belonged to a pioneering family vital to the town's foundation. "The Harrisons," he said, the name heavy with history. "They had been key to the community's development." The historian's tone grew personal as he recounted how his own father held the Harrisons in high regard. "They were considered guardians of this town's spirit," he said. Sarah and Michael sensed deeper layers to the story, perhaps tied to the mysterious photograph they'd discovered. Mr. Abernathy revealed another link. His son had married into the Harrison family. Producing a wedding photo, he pointed out his daughter-in-law, Emily, a direct descendant. Sarah and Michael leaned in, intrigued by the new connection. The conversation took a darker turn when he recalled the disappearance of the family patriarch. "Old man Harrison went hunting one day and vanished," he said, displaying a weathered newspaper clipping that documented the event. The disappearance had left a deep mark on the family and town. "It sent ripples through Redwood Falls," Mr. Abernathy reflected. The incident marked the beginning of hard times for both the Harrisons and the community. Motivated by the tale, Sarah and Michael pressed for more. "Were there other unusual stories about the Harrisons?" Michael asked. Mr. Abernathy nodded and retrieved a worn book filled with records. He flipped through its pages with care. They asked if the man resembling Sarah in the photo could have been a Harrison. Mr. Abernathy examined the image and murmured, "It's possible. Over the years, we lost track of many distant relatives." Trying to find connections that might explain their son's disappearance, Sarah asked if there had been similar incidents in the past. Mr. Abernathy paused, his expression distant. "There are many tales," he said, shuffling through papers with trembling hands. "The town archives might hold something more concrete." He directed them to the archives at the end of Main Street. "Public records, family registers, land deeds, you'll find them there," he explained. Sarah took careful notes, determined not to overlook a single clue. Inside the dim archive room, Michael suggested starting with newspapers from the year his father disappeared. Sarah retrieved a large ledger. The musty scent of aging paper filled the air as they began their search. With determined steps, Sarah and Michael approached the archive's main desk. They requested all records concerning the Harrisons. "This might take some time," the clerk warned. They prepared for a long session, notebooks and pens ready. Sarah tied back her hair. Anticipation mounted as file after file was placed before them. "Here are the deed transfers, newspaper clippings, personal letters, and more," the clerk said, motioning to the towering stack. They specifically requested land records, wills, and letters tied to the cabin area. While the clerk retrieved more, they examined what they had, noting inconsistencies in timelines. "These dates don't match up," Sarah observed. In a quiet corner, they unrolled a detailed Harrison family tree. Michael pointed out names and dates, while Sarah cross-checked against other documents. Then came a breakthrough. Sarah spotted the man from the cabin photo in a faded family chart. "That's him," she said, recognizing the features. His identity as a Harrison became clear as connection to the cabin increasingly plausible. Sarah soon discovered an old letter mentioning the cabin and a secret gathering. She showed it to Michael, who quickly spotted another document, a land grant with her great-grandfather's name. Dated alongside the earliest Harrison records, it hinted at something deeper. This suggested their families were once closely connected. Could our families have been intertwined? Sarah wondered. Michael nodded, realizing the implications. If true, it could explain the resemblance in the photo and perhaps even Tommy's link to it all. The family trees, now interlaced with marriages and shared ventures, confirmed their ancestors' deep ties. "This changes everything," Sarah murmured, tracing the links across the pages. They had unknowingly stepped into a legacy built by both of their families. They considered what this might mean. Could this be why Tommy? Sarah's voice faded into the silence, the weight of possibility heavy in the air. The deeper they dug, the more it became clear understanding these connections might be the key. Michael speculated about old land feuds or family secrets as they studied maps and legal documents from generations past. Armed with new knowledge, they knew they had to return to the cabin. With maps, photographs, and papers stuffed into their backpacks, they set out once again. This time, they would venture deeper than before. "Last time, we barely scratched the surface," Sarah noted as they reviewed the map. They marked several key locations places that may have held meaning to the Harrisons and possibly to Tommy. As they approached the cabin, memories of their first visit mixed with a renewed determination. The path, once unfamiliar, now felt like an old challenge revisited. Using their historical findings, they analyzed the site differently, but as the sun vanished, they lost their way. The path twisted unnaturally, familiar landmarks vanished in the growing dark. Suddenly, the quiet broke with a sharp tapping, the same sound they remembered from their last visit. A fox appeared in the underbrush, its gaze fixed on them, urging them to follow. They hesitated but chose to trust it, driven by urgency. Through thick vegetation, they trailed the fox deeper into the forest, the creature guiding them with uncanny purpose. After what felt like hours, the trees opened into a moonlit glade. They paused, breathless, scanning the clearing for any sign of Tommy or the truth they sought. Their search was interrupted by a stern man who emerged from the shadows, weapon drawn. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" he demanded. Startled but composed, Sarah held up Tommy's cap and the photo. "We're just looking for our son. He's missing. We think he came this way," she explained, her voice trembling. The man studied them in silence. Michael added, "There's a connection to this place, to the Harrisons, maybe even to you." He paused, then slowly lowered his weapon. "I need to understand why you're here," he said, gesturing for them to follow him into the woods. As they walked, he revealed his identity, a descendant of the Harrison patriarch who had vanished long ago. "My ancestors settled this land. I chose to continue their way away from the chaos of modern life," he said with quiet pride. He spoke of a self-sufficient life rooted in tradition, leading them to a secluded part of the forest. "This simplicity, it's a kind of freedom," he added. Then came the moment they had longed for. "We found your boy wandering. He's safe," the man assured them, pointing to a warmly lit cabin nearby. Laughter and voices spilled into the night. Heart-pounding, Sarah followed the sound. From the doorway, Tommy ran toward them, his face bright with recognition and joy. They embraced him, tears and relief overwhelming them. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. The reunion was more than a moment, it was a turning point. Their long search had ended, but their story had deepened. As they walked back through the forest, the cabin disappearing behind them, Michael said, "Our family story is here, isn't it? Part of this town's lore." They nodded in quiet agreement, realizing their journey hadn't just led them to their sonnet, had rooted them in something larger, a legacy, a mystery resolved, and a new beginning.